has been doing this with her clients for probably 15 or 20 years.
Studying it a lot.
Yeah, yes, and so she really does have a really good bit of information on that, where she's actually tracked her clients using Queen Anne's lace and how many pregnancies they had and how many they did and all that sort of thing.
So Robin resuscitated this from ancient tradition, but Phyllis was raised using this, and I got to tell the story. So I asked her, well, how does it work? And she said, well, that's why I have 5 kids instead of 15.
You only have 5. Could have been worse. What I found, and that Robin Rose confirmed, is that it works really well as birth control. It's a morning after, and it is a uterine irritant, so it stops implantation. Doesn't stop fertilization, it stops implantation. Makes the uterus unpleasant to attach to, so it doesn't implant, it just keeps on going. But it works better in younger women. Somewhere around premenopause, with fluctuations in hormones, Queen Anne's lace doesn't work quite as well, which is why I had a child at 43. And Robin Rose she confirmed that in tracking the women that she worked with too, that up until perimenopause it was very effective, and then after perimenopause not so effective. So keep that in mind if you want to use it. It's morning after. She uses the seeds. I was taught to use the oily seed tops, so the whole flower was used in the South, and it just put it in it. This is an infusion because you do want to save the oil and get as much oil that as you can. So it wasn't boiled for birth control. It was infused boiling water. I usually would just stuff like a flower top in a pint jar, pour boiling water on it, and let it sit until it turned the color of urine, because it does, and had oiliness floating on top, and it would be like, okay, now I'll drink this. And it is like one time a day. And I would say in a younger woman it's probably just as effective as birth control pills or the IUD or something along those lines.
Any time the cycle should be used?
It's just after implant. It's after morning after sex. And so I don't think it's any more effective before ovulation and after, because you've got that narrow window there. When prime ovulation time is basically about 4 days. Is what sperm can live inside for 48 hours.
Yeah.
So you've got that window of time that you have to work with. So unless you're trying to get pregnant and do it twice a day or a day for 4 days, then I don't know that Queen Anne's lace would work.
Yeah, I do got to say it can even work a lot longer after that. I had one case. I don't usually give up for patients, but this woman was a best friend of a friend of mine, a client, and both me and her friend hated her husband. He was such a subtle. He wasn't somebody that was like abusive or something like that, a normal way, but he failed at everything. He just did everything wrong. He was a monkey wrench thrower, is what I call it. And I just could not stand to see her pregnant with another kid. She was already a month and a half pregnant, and my friend called me up and pleaded with me to find something. I said, yeah, I'm totally with you on this one. And I gave the Queen Anne's lace. It would have been a tincture of the green seed, which is the flower top. So I just take that flower top, put it in vodka, and I definitely concur that that's the best time. You can just tell because there's that oil. It's just very beautiful. The oil is a little irritating to the kidneys, but that gives it its medicinal power as a diuretic. But at any rate, that did work for her. So, so even that's stretching it, but even longer.
Did she know she was taking it?
Oh, yeah, she did. This is because the irritating oil may actually slough the membrane too.
This what I would agree it does. It sloughs the membrane, the lining of the uterus off, and so it makes it a really good remedy for these polyps we were talking about earlier. They come up shrink them and swap that uterine lining out, but it's also swapping the lining out of the kidney membranes and also swapping the bladder. I mean, it's going through the system of swapping mucosal lining all the way through the tracts to keep that moving.
Yeah, but herbs go for where they're needed, so it tends to, if there's a bad membrane, it'll go there.
It tends to congregate, I think, in the uterus, or it's the oils are,
Looks
but
like
they're
a
also,
uterus.
it does, well, it's also hormonally active, and I think that drives it too. Ron Drummond and I had a huge email argument over it, and I said, I think it has more progesterone. He said, he thought it had more estrogen, and then we went back and forth over several months of laying our cases. And then at the end I said, oh, I think it's more estrogenic, you're right. And he said, no, I think it's more progesterone. Progesterone, I think you're right. We're kind of back where we started. And I was like, oh, wait, it makes sense it's progesterone because our body will take progesterone and convert that into estrogen or testosterone, whatever we need. So then we
How
just...
about if it's more pituitary, commanding both of them?
Well, I think it is more pituitary, and that's one of the uses. Hypothalamic pituitary. So anyway, that's what we ended up with. So it's really good for these bleeding polyps that I talked about earlier today, and it will help stop bleeding in uterine bleeding in a short period of time, especially if there's polyps there. It is swapping the lining out, and it is irritating to the uterus, and you can see that in the period blood after you start taking quinine. I don't suggest taking it as a tonic long term, because what happens is you'll see the mucus in the period. You know the uterus is getting over-irritated. Sometimes the mucus is mixed with blood. Sometimes it's separate from the blood, and you can really see it. And so you're not going to get pregnant while that's going on. However, if you can't get pregnant and really want to be pregnant, you take quinanzolase for a month or about 6 weeks, and you stop taking it. Clean the uterus out, and swap the lining off, and now you're more fertile than you were when you started with. It's like getting a DNC, which used to be the treatment for infertility, the medical treatment that go in there and scrape that lining out, and then it's very easy for implantation to occur the next time there's fertilization. So in that way, quinanzolase also is like anti-fertile and fertile. It depends on how you're using it.
Yeah, also another thing is that it will regulate the period too. That's why the pituitary, like if you're irregular, I didn't actually figure this out. It was just somebody read my book, and his girlfriend was irregular, so they began using it like once a month, at maybe before the full moon or something, but anyway, at a regular time of the month. And after a couple of months, she was real regular, so it had that regulatory. Plus, the other thing is, I mean, whether it's regulatory hormonally, it sloughs the membrane. So if you use it boom, repeatedly month after month, then you begin to establish that habit.
Right, that's true too.
With its cleansing actions like that, what about endometriosis?
Endometriosis is outside the uterus.
Right, but so it doesn't have the same effect.
It doesn't have the same effect. And there's no good way to drain off endometriosis. So it makes endometriosis very hard to work with. It's outside the normal drainage.
Well, once it's outside, yeah, but a very, very good remedy for endometriosis is to stop it as a process. You can't get rid of maybe what's already formed, but gotten out of the uterus, but trillium is really good for endometriosis.
I just had an endometriosis case with success. But
With success, what did you use?
oh, don't ask me that now.
I hope you're writing these things down.
Yeah, my brain's on something else right now. But no, I don't remember. I'd have to look it up. I don't remember.
Well, I think there's more endometriosis than there's ever been, but remember when I talked about the uterus this morning, there's that opening at the top. And so, women can avoid endometriosis by not being overly active on their period because it's going to push the menstrual blood out the top of the uterus. Don't do yoga and do inverted poses. It's going to drop the blood out of the top of the uterus and it's going to get into the other part. Don't hang by your knees from the swing set when you're on your period. You know, this is one of the traditions that I think we've lost. It was very wise. The tradition used to be when a woman was on her period, she lay around and took it easy. And there's a reason for that. You know, you're losing blood. You know, men can bleed for 5 days and not die. You know, they think they were gods.
But they're really not.
But, you know,
lying around during these 5 days.
yeah, but women are bleeding. You know, women are bleeding, and it's non-coagulating blood. So, you know, it's blood loss. You should be taking care of yourself. You should be laying around. You should be taking it easy. You shouldn't be acting like you're not on your period, which is what current culture, society really wants to see women do. You're supposed to ignore your own period and act like you don't have it when you really should be like resting. And, you know, so women still work out. Women still do heavy labor. Women still do all this stuff they really shouldn't be doing on their period because it's forcing, the movement is forcing the blood out. And I think that's one of the contributors, may not be the only contributor. I think it's a huge contributor to endometriosis.
Boy, I learned such good stuff from you. You're not mentioning like the 3 types of endometriosis, and that helped me treat this so much. So there's one type where they overbuild the lining, but they don't have good expulsive power.
Right.
That's what Trillium really fits, because Trillium really helps with downward expulsive movement, and it's the old Indian midwife remedy. Helps bring the baby down. And Tismal talked about this, like if you had the dream of the Trillium, then you were a midwife, and you would wear it like on your insignia, like on your clothing, powwow, to show that you were a midwife. And so it's called birth root or Beth root. It entered into white man's medicine. And a major use for it also was the bleeding of tuberculosis, so it's anti-hemorrhagic too. So it's really good for that severe hemorrhaging of a lot of endometrium passing through, but it also, so it increases the downward expulsion. It's used just before pregnancy. It's not used all during the pregnancy, last couple of days. And and then it's for severe, like collapse almost of the pelvis, like not so much prolapse, but just a totally collapsed feeling, like exhaustion, like the uterus has, well, it is a prolapse probably, but the uterus is totally exhausted, won't go back up. So it's 2 downward movements. So it reestablishes the good tone in the uterus. And so it has both those because, see, to increase downward movement, that's a stimulant reaction, and then to cut down on the overbuilding, that's a sedative. They're opposites. So this plant has those 2 opposites. Plus it's terribly, terribly acrid, so it has some sort of that muscular acrid rests the muscles or relaxes muscles. So it has that. So that tones. So that covers that one type of endometriosis really well because I've had over a dozen cases, and even one woman, like she was like 27, married, she wanted to have kids. The doctor said, "Oh, you have to have a hysterectomy." And she said, "I don't want to." Like she and her husband, "What do I do?" And I treated her completely by email and telephone, and boom, like within like about 5 months she was pregnant. She sent me a sonogram, had a healthy delivery baby, and she went to the doctor after that. And the doctor yelled at her and said, "How could you trust your life to an herb?" Like, A, it's not toxic. B, it's like 3 drops, 1 to 3 times a day. It's like not very much. And he didn't even, it's superstition, Mr. Doctor. You don't even pay attention here. And some things, you know, some people feel it's worth dying for. You know, it would be worth, you know, having kids is really important. So that was really good. So then there's a second type of endometriosis you taught me about, which is when there's mucus that sticks the endometrium. It won't, and it gets stuck. It doesn't descend with the period, and then it gets unstuck and goes the wrong way, or whatever. And yeah, I've only had one case like that. That was Easter Lily. And that woman thanked me so much. She was infertile. She was in her late 30s. They never, well, unless they had kids after that, and she wasn't expecting. She wasn't trying to get pregnant, but she was so grateful for the pain relief from the Easter Lily. So.
And Queen Anne's lace is good for that one too.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah, so
back to Kleenex. The third kind is where it's in your lungs or someplace where it can't get normally, and they didn't know how it gets that way. Maybe it got into the woman in vitro when she was, in utero when she was in the test tube, no, when she was in her mother's uterus. So it's like diabolical. How did it get there? So no one cares about it. So,
That's true.
yeah.
So also with endometriosis, when it comes out of the top of the uterus, it can go fill up with fallopian tubes and stop the egg from moving down. And that can make a woman infertile. And Queen Anne's is pretty useful for that too, to break that up. The fallopian tubes have a pretty good blood supply. And the little hairs, fallopian tubes have little hairs that point down all the way through the tube. And these little hairs pointing down stop things from moving up. So this is why a lot of times bacterial infection or endometriosis stops in the fallopian tube because it can't get past these hairs. It takes a long time, so it's a really good effective way. And just something I'll mention about the period in Native American tradition. The reason a woman was put separate for a man when she was on her period is not because she was unclean. That was totally the Christian version of what was going on. This is what the chronicles of Native American ways of life were seen. That wasn't she's unclean, she's bleeding, we're going to put her over here, and her own separate teepee. That was so white man interpretation of an action that's not even funny. What really is the real reason women were put separate while they were bleeding is because this is a time when woman gives blood to the earth. She is closest to the earth at this point in time, and this is when a woman learns.
When she what?
Learns. So this was school. So young women would go to the women's hut. She'd be on her period. All the elder women come in and teach her. This is when she gets instruction in basket making, instruction in how to use the herbs, going out, figuring out what the herbs look like, how to do this, how to do that. This was school. This was learning time. This is when a woman is most receptive to learning. And this is really true, even now. If you're in school, you just notice when you're on your period, you're quiet, you absorb everything. You really learn. The rest of the time, you're too busy looking at guys, or too busy running after the kids, or too busy doing this, or too busy, your thoughts are someplace else. Only when a woman's on her period, she's centered, and her thoughts are around her.
So you're saying we should send our wives to the bedroom
Or
more
she'll
often?
send you out of the house.
I'm just thinking if she can go to a room and read a book or something,
That's
Yeah,
how you
that's
have
true.
your
I
man
mean, it will
caves.
make a huge difference. It'll make a huge difference.
Appreciate
This is
that
one-
clarification, because I had read that too, and it was like, not comparing me to a bunch of other things too. It sounds like I was inconsistent with the real intent, yeah.
The real, remember when you read a lot about Native
Yeah.
American ways of life, it's through the
Through the
interpretation,
lens, yeah.
through that lens, that cultural lens of the white man at the
Yeah.
time. It's not really what the Native Americans were doing, it's what they were perceived they were doing all. Because men at this, a lot of in the 16th, 17th, even into the 1800s, these chronicles of Native American way of life were all white men who were coming from this view of women as weaker, lesser, evil creatures in the fall of the world, because Eve ate the apple, and so they translated. Native Americans never thought like that,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So but this is why they were separated. It's like, oh, now it's school time. Now you learn. So, and then the other 3 weeks a month, you practice what you learned in that week. So, all right, so we're doing basket making. Here's how you do it. Now, for 3 weeks, you go practice, and then next month you come back, we'll see how your basket is. It doesn't make a whole lot more sense.
Yeah.
It does.
Even Tony Robbins says, you do something for 28 days, it's more ingrained than you learn more from it. So
Don't you feel too like women are more in their power?
Well, that's
Yeah.
it.
That's it,
You're
yes.
You're center, you're in your power,
Yes.
you're receptive, you're open, you learn things.
And it would be nurturing, very emotionally nurturing.
Totally. Totally. So, and because women had a huge place in Native American tribes, European women did not. So this was the other lens the white man was seeing through. is that women in tribes had power, and they weren't used to that. They were used to, remember, seeing women as this other way of creatures that had to be defended, taken care of, weren't too smart, weren't as good as men. You know, where in Native American tribes, women did have place of powers, and like in the Creek tribe, and to a great extent the Cherokee, the tribe didn't go to war unless women said it was okay.
Yeah, Iroquois is the same way. Matter of fact, women are more important than the men.
Exactly, because it's a maternal society, right? So a lot is centered around women. Men were just like to pick up heavy things and bring it.
They are,
Take out
and,
your
Take out the garbage.
The Neanderthals.
and actually, women were really the medicine makers too, or the medicine. Women were the medicine people.
Women were the herbalists in
Yeah.
almost all the tribes. Now, the medicine man was generally a man in Cherokee, but it could be a woman in Creek. I mean,
Yeah,
Or
I
even
never-
Lakota.
I mean, I don't know.
Even Paul says in Lakota too, he says the women were the medicine people. And he said it shifted to the men. Because I ran into
it
some
shifted
men
to
in the
men
Lakota
after
tribe.
the settlers came, and,
Yeah.
and this change, this paternal energy came
Yeah.
in.
Well, yeah, as a white man, you don't want to take advice from, some lowly
No.
Indian woman.
But no, even
Oh.
the Indian men now, like I've run into some Lakota men now, and they find that I'm an herbalist, and sometimes some of this one guy was really actually intimidated by that because I was a white woman,
Right.
but I had the medicine,
Right.
and then Paul said it's kind of shifting back now again, that the women are getting the medicine back more than the men now.
Well, in the
Let's
Creek,
see.
in the Creek tribe,
Okay, I gotta say something. What I was taught was that they didn't have as many herbalists. They did have some, but different people learned different herbs. And you went to somebody who was a specialist in one thing, specialist in another thing. They might just know one herb, and you went to that person. Could be male or female, and there was a lot of that. Then you had like medicine societies where you had stored for generations, perhaps millennia, and you had and even scrolls written on birch bark and stuff from the Ojibwe, and you had male and female both, and there's a lot of, it's not that simple that it was just female. I truly got to object to that.
well, it was whoever had the most, in the Creek, it was whoever had the most talent. And in Creek medicine, there were the highest level was prophets, and this is like a common literature. And the prophets can be male or female, and the prophets control the weather, work with the elements, and these were the people who dreamed new medicine. So when you had a disease nobody ever saw before, these are the people who fasted and dreamed and came up with a new cure, the new medicine. The second was were the herbalists, and they could be male or female. And they were the keeper of the generational uses of herbs that got passed on, and being an herbalist was learned. Where being a prophet, you were called, and it was kind of a special, pure place, and you talked to plants, you talked to Creator, you had the dreams and the visions, and you worked with the elements. Where the herbalist, anybody that had a knack for it could be an herbalist, and then they learned through oral tradition every herb anybody in the tribe had ever used for whatever. We're herbalists. It's exactly pretty much the same way. And then the last level of healer was the person who kept the sacred grounds. And this was almost always a man because this was heavy work. And this was a person who was in charge of keeping the land clean where the ceremonies were held, and keeping the brush down, and keeping the snakes out, and blessing that land so when ceremonies were held, the land was ready to go. Right? So that was almost all.
Sounds like each one has a different mantle that they're in charge
Right,
of.
right. So it really was. But other than that one, the prophet and the herbalist could be male or female. It's just whoever had the talent. And they were always looking for who had the most talent. It didn't necessarily go in families. And sometimes for 2 or 3 generations it could be women, or sometimes for 2 or 3 generations it could be men, or vice versa. But then separate from that were the midwives. They delivered the babies, and you saw after women's thing, and they were considered part of the herbalist group. But men just didn't generally deliver babies.
Unless there were 2 souls, as Tisman would say.
Yeah, or upside down souls. I've also heard it called that, upside down souls.
Good him.
And or gay, and that's and they would and could. So no, I think that was a very important thing that we've lost. And women women in the world, and it's really affected our health, that we don't take care of ourselves. So I highly encourage all my clients to do that. Chill out. You know, you may have to go to work, you go home, soak your feet, have a hot bath, have a long, long shower, hit the couch, read a book, order pizza, whatever. You know, but really take care of yourself, because you're expelling, you're releasing, you're bleeding. You know? That takes a lot of energy, and it takes a lot of energy every month to recover from that. So it takes fully 1/3 of the calories a woman takes in to do that process every month. It's a lot. It's a lot of energy. So this is why after menopause, if you keep eating the same way, you'll obviously gain weight. You don't need those 1/3 of those calories in the process. It's falling into the wrong way.
Yeah, I also wanted to, there's so much political stuff about metabolism. I was reading a female anthropologist. She said in Europe, the main gynecologists were older prostitutes.
Yeah.
And this is really respected, actually. I mean, they were kind of hated and respected, but they were not just devalued. So it's not. It's like, oh, witches, you know. It's like, well, we get it a little differently.
So back to Queen Anne's lace. I think Queen Anne's lace is not only a powerful women's herb, it's a powerful endocrine herb, and it's used as an endocrine herb in the South, which is a little bit different from other parts. Tommy
It's not used in other parts of the country, basically. Well, obviously, but no, Dr. Cooper used it. He did call it pituitary remedy,
He did.
but it's not.
That's about it.
Yeah.
So I can tell you some of the things Tommy used it for. He used it for type 2 diabetes. He used it for low thyroid. He used it for what we now call syndrome X or prediabetes. You get to the person, you know, in time they didn't become type 2 diabetics. He used it for nervous exhaustion, which is now what we're calling adrenal insufficiency. And he used it to balance women's cycles. So, I mean, it's really used for almost every part of the endocrine system. And use it for almost everything in relation to. So, like for low thyroid, he would often combine Queen Anne's lace with black walnut, or black walnut chicory. I would still do that. And Queen Anne's lace is also anti-inflammatory. So I really like it for Hashimoto's. Really helps, really any kind of autoimmune disease, it can be, or disorder, it can be very, very helpful.
Both ways or one way? Autoimmune. I mean, it's autoimmune
Hyper
access.
or, yes,
Both
it's a
ways?
balancer.
Okay.
So hypo or
Yeah.
hyper. You know, it's a really good balancer. And this is in tonic.
So you said it does a good job of softening out the mucous membrane, and then in terms of autoimmune disease, so ulcerative colitis, would that be
Yeah,
something
totally.
to take up?
Now yes, it would work. Now, there's a difference in dose here, and every disorder had its dose, right? So for birth control, it was a massive dose, right? Big. For tonic, much smaller dose, because you're going to use it as a tonic. Where birth control, you're using it acutely. So there's a, look at it a little different in your dosage amount. For chronic stuff, normally I would, make up a decoction. Tommy would cook it up for weight loss. It was a great weight loss, especially if there was a lot of fluid around here, or a lot of weight here, which he called liver fat, which I might call liver fluid. Liver, he would have people cook up. He would say, take a handful of Queen Anne's lace and throw it in a big pot of water and boil it up for about 20 minutes and pour it into a gallon jug and drink that gallon over 2 days. And the weight would just melt off. And it was amazing how much it moved. Because that is really like water, not fat. If you lose 20 pounds in 2 weeks, you've not lost any fat, you've lost fluid, right? This is how diet and plan suck you in. And the Queen Anne's lace is really good at moving that stored excess fluid off. Now, you still got to repair your body to keep it off and not rebuild that fluid that you think is fats. So he used it for that, and it's amazing how many people would say, I'm out of Queen Anne's lace and just come back in. Because in the early days, Tommy taught everybody how to use their herbs. He didn't just like say, come back when you run out, I'll put you up some. He's like, here's the stove, this is how you cook it up, now you go take care of yourself. And he almost quit practicing in the 70s because he said people got lazy and they wouldn't take responsibility for themselves and nobody wanted to cook with the herbs anymore. And he got very discouraged and thought about quitting. And then he discovered capsules in the 80s. He's like, okay, now I'll just tell people about capsules. They're too lazy to cook with herbs. So Queen Anne's lace for that. And for anything to do with the endocrine system, I do find it very, very helpful with type 2 diabetes and Syndrome X. And sometimes these folks, there's a certain kind of group of folks I'm seeing lately that I've been using it with. I think it's really getting effective. These are the people who started out really overweight. And they decided, okay, I'm 75 pounds overweight, I need to lose some weight. I'm going to go on the paleo diet. And they go on a bad paleo diet. And their idea of the paleo diet is to eat 6 hunks of meat at every meal and no vegetables. Maybe a salad. I mean, you run into these people, yeah, I have. Or maybe one vegetable or something. And the paleo diet should really be small portions of meat, lots of vegetables, lots of root vegetables. So you really are getting like 3 times the vegetables and a little bit of meat. Kind of reversed. So what happens when these people start losing weight, they lose weight, they lose weight, they lose weight, and you see them from the back, and they look normal. You walk around the front, they've still got the tub out there, and it's hard. It's not like.
Oh, that's cortisol type.
It's cortisol type 2, exactly. And and it's hard and watery. I find this is the beer gut too. And if somebody with a true beer gut, it's all out here and it's hard, and it's fluid in its liver.
No, I was thinking cortisol is hard and muscular.
Yeah, and liver gut, beer gut is hard and muscular. You know, it's
doesn't
pretty
sag as
taunt.
much.
It
Beer
doesn't.
gut sags
No, they don't
more
say
than-
anything.
Beer gut sags a little bit. Well, this is like either one. It'll work on either one because I use it on beer gut too. So anyway, but it's out here. I think maybe the signature is from the back they look normal. Basically, they have no butt. In more guys than women that I see it with. And what happens is they're no longer overweight. They feel like they're getting healthy. They're even eating massive amounts of meat. Then they become diabetic. And they're not eating sugar and they haven't eaten grains in a long time. But they still get diabetic. And that's a real hard type 2 diabetes to look at how to remedy. And I'm seeing more and more of that. It's just not balanced. And so I'm not sure, I'm still puzzling through the mechanism because I've seen like 6 people in the last couple of months. Exactly.
Did they give up beer too?
Yeah. The 1 or 2 of them. There were other ones, 4 of them never drank. You know, they just like a few years ago said, oh, I'm going on the paleo diet, at least I'm going to lose weight. You know, they don't call it the paleo diet, they're calling it the
Sounds more
Atkins.
Yeah.
They're calling it the Atkins diet, and they went on it and never came off of it. That's what they did. So I'm thinking there's got to, maybe some kidney damage in there from the massive amount of protein or, going through your system.
Yeah, well, they're the survivors. There's a bunch of other ones that died of kidney failure.
Right. But their body translates this into diabetes. The ultimate end result of all this is, and so I know the pancreas may be involved, the liver is definitely involved, and the kidneys are involved, right? So Queen Anne's lace is working amazingly well to help these people. And because usually when they become diabetic, they're also find out they have high blood pressure to go along with it. And it's a real hard high blood pressure for conventional medicine to treat. These are the people that end up on 4 or 5 medications to try to control their high blood pressure. Queen Anne's lace is really, really helpful and useful there. It's really balancing to the endocrine system. Somehow it helps the cells uptake insulin a little bit better, and I'm not sure of that mechanism, but I'm just seeing that that's one of the things that's happening. highly recommend to give it a try. Or even someone who's not overweight, who's on 3 or 4 different blood pressure medicines that can't quite get it balanced, queen Anne's Lace might just be the ticket for them. It's very useful. So high blood pressure, I mean, there's really not a lot you can't use it for. I mean, if somebody said you only get 10 herbs, that would be in my list of 10. Because there's no other herb that I know works on the endocrine system and the organ systems in exactly the same way as humans does. It's really pretty amazing once you start working with it.
So like for those people you were talking about, they would take a tonic of it for how long?
2 months, 3 months, maybe even 4 months, but it's a much smaller amount. And here I found that the tinctures work okay in this situation, as I started to say. And I usually say like 5 or 6 drops 3 times a day for the tincture, or 1 flower infused for only 15 minutes, so the water is barely changing color, and then drink that over the day. That works too. It is a tonic. And where I'm at, we get Queen Anne's Lace. Probably 2 months a year. You can find some Queen Anne's
Sure,
Lace
it's not
somewhere.
3 months.
Wow. Wow.
You
Well,
get at least 2 months, yeah.
It comes and it just kind of dies out, but never goes away in the summer, and then it comes back in the fall. So we're getting our second crop. I'm getting to see the second crop right now. So it's been available, but the tincture works pretty good on this. I have been pleased with the low dose tincture in these situations, even for the thyroid, even for helping with thyroid.
Yeah, when dealing with the endocrine system, you don't want to give big doses because, plants that act on the endocrine system, they're just so active. And I don't think that they have huge quantities of hormonally active or mimics or whatever they would have. They don't need to have huge amounts because all you need to do is press a few buttons lightly. You can really affect the endocrine system. So no big doses on the endocrine remedies.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, it's very true, especially Hashimoto's.
What would you say about the spirituality of it?
Well, I heard Matthew once describe it as clown medicine.
Yeah, that's all I was just going to talk about that. Yeah.
Segues.
So remedies that look like a cloud that have kind of a vaporous, misty or cloudy look, sometimes a furry, so they're cloud medicines. And cloud medicines go through all the barriers. They go through the keyholes, they go through the little pores, so to speak. Somebody with cloud medicine, they're kind of very Piscean, we would say, astrology, a water type, and they diffuse, they pick up people's energy. They don't even know what they're picking up sometimes. They're picking up stuff all the time. They're transmediums, as you would call them. Or also, so they feel other people's feelings. They get better and better at that as they get older, keeping a boundary, but they're natural that way. So that's cloud medicine. And cloud medicine, they can go in and unlock people's problems sometimes. On the other hand, Pisces rule slavery, they can get stuck in there too, so they have to be careful that way as well, like emotionally stuck in somebody else, in some thing that the other person can't deal with. So that's cloud medicine for a person that they have that, and they're very universally empathetic often, and kind and generous and thoughtful and wise often because they can pick up on other people's stuff, but then too sensitive. So that's cloud medicine for people. Then cloud medicine for among the plants. Among the animals, skunk is the cloud medicine, and skunk is definitely the cloud medicine.
I was like, how did you get that? I'm having trouble connecting with skunk being cloud medicine. Maybe the aroma.
Yeah.
That's it. Okay, great.
Way, drifting out.
Yeah. And then on to the plants, this Daphnis vaporous. So this one's a good illustration of it. Meadowsweet illustrates it. I don't know that Meadowsweet acts on the hormones. It's used pretty mundanely for the stomach. Pulsatilla, that furry kind of spring, gentle look to it. That's another pituitary remedy. Most of these are pituitary remedies, but that the hormones diffuse through everything and get everywhere. So it's not clear whether these remedies like open up the passageways, or they open up the receptors, or they generate more hormones. The hormone system is not well understood, and always to get perspective here, they did not know until 1976 the difference between type 1 and type 2 diabetes, which is like shocking if you know what the difference is. It's like, oh my God. And so today when they say, oh, it's low thyroid it's never a receptor site problem, it's always the thyroid or the pituitary. It's like, yeah, sure. It's like, how could it sometimes not be the receptor site? They just haven't proven that yet, you know? Haven't gotten there yet. And so we have all these plants. Let's see, other ones, cloud medicines are some
Maybe
number.
with valerian ones, since it's so fluffy.
I don't know, but sometimes they do have sharp leaves like that and soft diaphanous, like Vitex has that. Like it looks kind of like blue clouds, but it has a beautiful cloudy and very sharp leaves, and that's like where something's gone in and interfered with the hormonal system. And then another one is Nigella. It's not real well known, but that's black cumin. That's the one you use it to. Yeah, I just grew it this year for the first time. That's the one that the Prophet Muhammad said could cure everything but death, which is a pretty safe thing to say. And actually, it adjusts the immune system up or down, too hot, too cold. So hyper, hypo. So actually, that makes a lot of sense that it could cure a whole lot of stuff because it adjusts it up and down. And it looks kind of, it's a cousin of baby's breath, but it's kind of like a baby's breath that's not quite as ornate and developed. Baby's breath would be another cloud medicine, but this is like a simpler looking baby's breath. And it has little black seeds, and a lot of the little black seeds are also, if not cloud medicines, they're hormonal normalizers. They're often EFAs, like this is high in essential fatty acids. I wonder if even Queen Anne's lace may be high in essential fatty acids.
Probably. I wouldn't
Yeah.
doubt it.
Yeah, it has all those oils in it. You can just really pick up on. And like, okay, evening primrose, you can even dump it out. You see the little black seeds. Black currant they use in Europe. Axanadrenal is real strong. Borage, the little black seeds.
Elderberry,
Yeah.
flowers, elderberry
Yeah.
flowers.
Okay, elderberry, very, much like cloud medicine too. Yeah. And actually, although Queen Anne's lace doesn't have little black seeds, it's getting close to that. It has like little dark brown seeds that are a little bit furrier, hairier. But at any rate, so they all tend to be this kind of endocrine thing going on. But as I've come to understand, because a number of them are essential fatty acid remedies, and that acts on both the fever mechanisms, the autoimmune system, and the endocrine system. So they have an action through that. So they're really profound, and quite a few of them are normalizers, like she's saying about Queen Anne's lace. Is also true in Nigella. So, yeah. So that's cloud medicine. It's a lot of fun.
And a couple more things about Queen Anne's lace. You can use it a lot like yarrow, and that was our yarrow. So it'll make you sweat. So it's in flu remedies, and Dr. Christopher used it as a flu remedy too. If you make a hot tea with yarrow and you throw a little, I don't know, elderflower and Queen Anne's lace tea is kind of like a really good flu, make you sweat, open up your pores remedy. Throw some in if you want. So it's used for that. It's also can be made into a salve with Solomon's seal for bruises, like we were talking about yarrow earlier using. Works perfectly for that. Actually, I think it works a little bit better with a Solomon seal, and that was one of the native uses for Solomon seal. You dig up a Solomon seal, and it stops. You rub the raw root, it stops the bleeding. It rub the raw root on the bruise, it makes the bruise start going away. So Queen Anne's lace and Solomon seals are a really good topical remedy. It ends up in insect bite formulas, in the south, Queen Anne's lace, you get bit by a spider or a mosquito or something, Queen Anne's lace salve on it takes the sting out, makes it feel a little bit better. So you can see how many uses it has. It's like Yarrow Plus. It has this amazing endocrine activity that Yarrow doesn't have, or if Yarrow has it, it's in a much smaller, less amounts. So that's why it's one of my top 10 herbs, and you just can't, you can really almost do it. And I think of it as cloud medicine too, because it moves with the winds. It knows how to bend, it knows how to be flexible. So the strong wind comes by, storms, and the Queen Anne's lace just blows almost to the ground, and then it just comes right back up. It's like moves with the wind. It's like a palm tree, sways in the winds. So I think of the flexibility of the plants, but it's strong but flexible.